Welcome back to the Technology Risk Podcast. Before we get into the heavy-hitting analysis we have lined up for today, I have a quick favor to ask. If you are getting value out of these conversations, please hit that subscribe button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or wherever you happen to be listening right now. It really helps us get this information out to more people.
It definitely does. And for today's discussion, you might actually want to take some notes because we are looking at a timeline that, well, most organizations get completely wrong.
Let's set the scene. It's January 2026. We're looking at the news cycle from January 10th about UnitedHealth. Now, looking at this, I have to play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
For a lot of people in the industry, when they see UnitedHealth breach in the headlines again, they roll their eyes. They go, wait, wasn't that last year? The systems are back up. Pharmacies are running. Why is this still a story?
That reaction is exactly the trap. Technically, you're right. The incident response is, over. The panic has subsided. Operations are green. But we're seeing this massive wave of renewed legal and regulatory scrutiny right now in 2026, stemming from that event.
So the fire is out, the building is rebuilt, but the arson investigators have just pulled into the driveway.
That is a perfect analogy. We tend to think of a cyber breach as this explosion, loud, messy, immediate. But in reality, especially for regulated industries like healthcare or finance, it's more like a slow-moving poisoning. The initial sickness passes, but the chronic condition, the lawsuits, the fines, the regulatory audits, that sets in months or even years later.
Which brings us to our core thesis for today. We, and by we I mean business leaders, tech leaders, boards, are terrible at estimating the long tail of these events. We pop the champagne when the backup restoration hits 100%, but we're ignoring the monster growing in the closet.
Precisely. And the UnitedHealth situation is the poster child for this. The new headlines aren't about hackers stealing data. That's done. The new headlines are about the lawsuits alleging that the safeguards weren't strong enough before the hackers even got in.
That distinction feels subtle, but it's massive, legally speaking. It's not, you got hacked, so you're in trouble. It's, you got hacked, and now we're going to spend 3 years proving you were negligent 3 years ago.
And the data backs this up. I mean, this isn't just anecdotal. If you look at the research from the Ponemon Institute, they found that over 65% of regulatory penalties and civil lawsuits are initiated 6 to 18 months after the breach.
6 to 18 months. That is a lifetime in technology years. You could have changed CTOs twice by then. Why the delay? I mean, in the internet age where data moves instantly, 6 months feels like an eternity. Why does it take so long for the hammer to drop?
It's because the legal system operates on a completely different clock than the cybersecurity world. Hackers move at the speed of light. Courts move at the speed of paper. Investigations take time. Forensics teams have to produce reports. Attorneys have to draft complaints. Regulators have to vote on enforcement actions.
I was looking at the data from the Stanford Cyber Policy Center.
Yeah.
And one stat it blew my mind. The average time from a breach disclosure to the first major lawsuit is 278 days.
Almost a full year.
That's terrifying. Think about the psychology of that within a company. That's 278 days where leadership might be thinking, yo, we dodged a bullet.
Exactly. They might be releasing budget back into other projects. They've let their guard down. The war room is disbanded. The crisis comms team has gone home. And then on day 279, the process server shows up at the reception desk.
And the whole conversation shifts, right? During the breach, on day 3, the question is frantic. It's how do we stop the bleeding? How do we get back online? But on day 279, the questions are totally different.
The questions become historical. They're asking, was there negligence? Did you fail your duty of care? Were you compliant before the bad guys got in? It stops being a technical problem and becomes an audit of your decision-making history.
Duty of care. We hear that term a lot, but let's define it for someone listening who isn't a lawyer. What does that actually mean in a cyber context?
It's a legal concept that basically asks, did you act like a prudent, responsible person or company would act under similar circumstances? It doesn't mean, did you prevent the crime? It means, did you lock the door? If I rob your house, I'm the criminal. But if you left the front door wide open with a sign saying free TV, your insurance company and the courts might say you failed your duty of care.
So it's about the effort and the standard, not just the outcome.
Right. And here's why the legal aftermath often hurts more than the hack itself.
Yeah.
You can patch a server. You can restore a backup. That takes days or weeks. But, and I think this is the key takeaway, you cannot patch a lawsuit.
You can't patch a lawsuit. That's such a strong point.
It's true, though. Legal exposure consumes leadership time. It drains the budget. It erodes brand equity. And it does this for years. We aren't talking about a bad quarter. We're talking about a drag on the company's performance that lasts for fiscal years.
Now, I imagine the standard they hold you to is tricky. I mean, is the expectation perfection? Because if the standard is don't get hacked, nobody is going to pass that test. The Pentagon gets hacked. Microsoft gets hacked. They can't stop it. How can a mid-sized healthcare firm be expected to?
And that's a major misconception. Regulators don't expect perfection. They know the bad guys are sophisticated. They know zero-day exploits exist. What they expect is reasonableness.
Reasonableness. That sounds vague. As an engineer, I hate words like that. Give me a metric. Give me a number.
Well, in court, it's actually fairly specific. It compares you to your peers.
Yeah.
The danger zone isn't being a victim of a crime. The danger zone is failing to prove you tried hard enough to prevent it compared to what everyone else in your industry is doing.
Okay, let's pressure test this. If I'm running a company and I get hit by a state-sponsored actor, let's say, sophisticated foreign intelligence agency, using an exploit nobody has ever seen before, am I okay legally?
Likely, yes, because what could you have reasonably done? You aren't the NSA, but flip the script. If you get hit because you hadn't patched a server that had a known vulnerability for 6 months, that's negligence.
That makes sense. One is an act of war, the other is leaving the keys in the ignition.
Exactly. And there's a stat here from Deloitte that really drives this home. 72% of enforcement actions cite inadequate controls prior to the breach, rather than the sophistication of the breach itself.
72%.
Yeah.
So in the vast majority of cases, the regulators aren't saying, wow, that hacker was a genius. They're saying, wow, your security was sloppy.
Correct. They aren't fining you for the breach. They are fining you for the open door.
This brings us to the part of the legal process that just sounds like a nightmare, discovery. I heard this described as a legal colonoscopy. Is that accurate?
It's worse. Discovery is where the skeletons come out to dance. This is where the opposing lawyers get the right to read your emails, your Slack messages, your internal memos, your text messages on work phones.
And this is where companies really hurt themselves, isn't it? It's not just the formal reports, it's the chatter.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine a plaintiff's attorney finding an email from an IT director sent 2 years ago. The email says, hey, we really need to increase the budget for security. Our firewall is a dinosaur. And the CFO replies, not this year. We need to boost margins for the shareholders.
Ouch. That's the smoking gun right there.
It's Exhibit A. That email chain proves you put profit over safety. Or imagine risk assessments that were performed, identified a critical gap, and then were just ignored. No action plan, no remediation, just filed away. That document does more damage in court than the hackers ever did to the servers. It proves you knew there was a risk and chose not to act.
So it's not just about what you did. It's about what you wrote down and what you ignored. It feels like a trap. If you assess your risks, you create evidence of the gaps. If you don't, you're negligent for not looking.
It feels like a trap if you aren't building what we call legal resilience. But before we get to the fix, we need to address the elephant in the room for the smaller players listening.
The we're too small to sue myth.
Right. There is this persistent belief among small to medium businesses, SMBs, that this is a Fortune 500 problem, that UnitedHealth has to worry about this, but Bob's regional healthcare clinic doesn't.
But if you're in a regulated industry, healthcare, finance, manufacturing, the law doesn't care how big your office is, does it?
Not one bit. HIPAA doesn't have a small business exception. The GDPR doesn't say only for companies with 1,000 employees. The outcome of a breach involves the same regulatory standards. If you lose patient data, you are liable. Period.
And I'm guessing smaller companies have fewer resources to fight this. UnitedHealth has an army of lawyers. Bob's clinic has.
Exactly. And here's the kicker, the insurance gap. This is a crucial insight for your listeners. Many SMBs think, it's fine, I have cyber insurance.
I hear that all the time. That's what the policy's for. But I'm sensing a but coming.
A huge but. They haven't read the fine print. A lot of policies cover response. They pay for the forensics team to figure out what happened, maybe a PR firm to write the press release, maybe credit monitoring for customers. But many specifically exclude regulatory fines or negligence claims.
Wait, why exclude fines?
In some jurisdictions, it's actually against public policy to insure against a fine. The logic is if insurance pays your parking ticket, you'll never stop speeding. If insurance pays your GDPR fine, you'll never fix your security.
Wow. That is a massive distinction. So you get the bill for the cleanup, but the bill for the punishment, which could be millions, is all on you.
Marsh did a study that found 41% of SMBs discover after an incident that major legal costs aren't covered by their policy. That is a bankruptcy-level event for a small firm.
That's terrifying. 41% think they have a safety net, and they're actually free-falling.
And it feeds back into that false sense of security. Leaders lower their guard once operations resume around day 30. They think, okay, we survived. But that is exactly when the plaintiff's attorneys are just starting their work.
Let's break down that timeline, because I think visualizing the life cycle of a breach is really helpful here. We've touched on the 278 days, but let's map it out phase by phase so people know what to expect.
Sure. Think of it in 4 phases. Phase 1 is day 0 to 30. That's the adrenaline phase. You're responding, containing, disclosing. This is pure chaos, but it's focused. Everyone has a job to do.
Then we hit the lull.
Right, month 2 to 6, the quiet phase. But it's deceptively quiet. This is where forensic reviews are happening, and regulators are quietly sending data requests. Send us your logs, send us your policies, send us your board minutes.
And then the hammer drops.
Month 6 to 18, the pain phase. This is when the lawsuits are filed. This is when the fines are levied. This is when consent decrees are signed.
Explain a consent decree for us. It sounds polite, but I suspect it isn't.
It's basically a settlement with the government where you agree to let them watch over your shoulder for the next decade. Imagine having a federal auditor living in your server room for 10, maybe 20 years. That's a consent decree.
Yikes. And finally,
Year 2 and beyond, the long tail. Ongoing monitoring, reporting requirements, and the reputational drag. Every time someone Googles your company, the breach is the second result.
and the scary observation here is that most organizations only budget and plan for day 0 to 30.
They plan for the fire, but not for rebuilding the house afterwards.
Okay, so we've terrified everyone. We've established that the legal blowback is delayed, expensive, and ruthless. Now let's pivot to the solution. Because we aren't just here to admire the problem. How do we build this legal resilience you mentioned? How do we prepare for the courtroom, not just the server room?
It requires a shift in mindset. You have to stop thinking just about defending data, which is an IT problem, and start thinking about defending decisions, which is a leadership problem.
Defending decisions. I like that. So how do we do that practically? What's step 1?
Strategy number 1 is the paper shield. Document everything. If it isn't written down in the eyes of the court, it didn't happen.
But you just told me that documents can be used against you. That email from the CFO was a disaster. So how do we document without creating a smoking gun?
You document the rationale, not just the problem. Don't just document, we installed a firewall. Document your risk assessments and your budget rationales. You need to be able to show a jury, look, we looked at the risks, we had limited resources, we allocated them here because it was the highest priority, and we had a plan to get to the rest.
So it's about showing your work. Like in math class, even if you get the answer wrong, meaning you get hacked, you get partial credit for showing the logic.
Exactly. It turns negligence into business judgment. Courts generally respect business judgment. They punish negligence.
That makes sense. What's strategy number 2?
Framework alignment. Courts don't want to see you inventing your own security style. They want to see you aligning with NIST, ISO 27001 CIS controls.
Stick to the classics.
Right. It's about showing you followed the standard of care. If you can say, we aligned our controls with the NIST framework, that is a powerful defense. It shows you weren't winging it, you were following industry best practices. It's the difference between building a house using the building code versus building a shed with scrap wood and hope.
Okay, but here's the reality check. Every company has gaps. You mentioned earlier that ignoring a gap is negligence, but no company has the budget to fix everything immediately. What if you just can't afford to fix it right now?
That leads to strategy number 3, and this is crucial. Document the why not.
The why not?
If you have a known gap, say an unpatched legacy system that runs a critical piece of machinery and can't be updated, you must document the rationale. We cannot patch this because it will break the production line. Instead, we have isolated it on its own network segment to reduce risk.
Ah, I see. So an unpatched system by itself looks like laziness. An unpatched system with a documented risk acceptance and compensating control looks like a decision.
Precisely. Negligence is ignoring the risk. Business decision-making is acknowledging the risk and managing it. If you have that document, you can defend yourself. If you don't, you look incompetent.
That is such a critical distinction. It empowers the C-suite to actually make choices rather than just hoping for the best. And finally, strategy number 4, keeping records clean.
This goes back to discovery. A warning to everyone listening. During an incident, avoid speculation or blame in Slack, Teams, or email.
No, I told you so emails to the boss.
Definitely not. And no, I think this might be because we forgot to update the server messages until you know for sure. Attorneys call this creating bad facts. Assume every single word you type during a crisis will be projected on a screen in a courtroom 2 years later. Keep it factual. Keep it professional.
That is great advice. It's hard to do in the heat of the moment, but essential. Let's make this concrete with a tale of two SMBs, because abstract advice is great, but stories stick.
Let's start with the failure example. Imagine a financial services SMB. Let's call them flimsy finance. They knew about the risk of phishing and credential theft. They knew they needed multi-factor authentication, or MFA, but the partners complained. They said it was annoying to pull out their phone and get a code every time they logged in, so they delayed deploying it.
I feel like I know this company. I think I might bank with this company.
We all do. So the breach happens, credentials stolen, data exfiltrated. Now fast forward 18 months. The lawsuit doesn't focus on the sophisticated Russian hackers. It focuses entirely on the negligence of ignoring the MFA risk. The minutes from the meeting where they decided to delay MFA because it was inconvenient, that became Exhibit A.
And that's a losing battle in court. We valued our convenience over your life savings is not a winning slogan.
It's a guaranteed settlement and massive fine. Now, contrast that with a success example. Let's call them Healthy Habits Clinic. A healthcare SMB gets hit by ransomware. Nasty stuff.
Okay, so the outcome technically looks the same. Breach.
Initially, yes. But this company had strong pre-incident documentation. They had regular risk assessments. They showed alignment with the high-pass security rule and NIST. They had documented why certain investments were prioritized over others.
So when the regulators came knocking,
The regulators acknowledged that the company had reasonable safeguards in place. They saw that the company took security seriously and had done their best within their budget. The penalties were significantly reduced. They didn't get off scot-free. A breach is still a breach, but they survived. Flimsy finance might not.
that really drives it home. The difference wasn't the attack, both got hit. The difference was the preparation before the breach.
Exactly. It's future-proofing against regulatory blowback. You have to assume post-breach scrutiny is guaranteed. Plan for the regulators and lawyers just as much as you plan for the attackers.
And elevate this to the board level. If these decisions are being made in a dark IT room, that's dangerous. If the board approves the risk acceptance, that carries weight.
Board minutes are gold in investigations. It shows governance. It shows the adults were in the room.
So to bring this all back to where we started with UnitedHealth, the headlines we are seeing in 2026 are not a surprise. They are a predictable phase in the life cycle of a breach.
UnitedHealth is just the current example of a universal truth. The real cost of a cyber incident often arrives long after the systems are restored. In regulated industries, the cyber incident is just the opening act. The courtroom is where the real damage is decided.
That is a sobering thought, but an empowering one if you take action now.
It is. And here is the thought I want to leave our listeners with. You cannot eliminate risk. It's impossible. But you can choose your battlefield. Do you want to fight on the battlefield of technical recovery, which is messy and unpredictable, or do you want to fight on the battlefield of negligence?
And the work you do regarding documentation today decides that.
Exactly. If you have the documentation, you are fighting with a shield. If you don't, you're fighting naked.
Choose your battlefield. I love that concept. Well, that brings us to the end of this analysis. If you found this breakdown valuable, I know I certainly did, please subscribe to the Technology Risk Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or your favorite podcast app.
It helps us keep bringing you these insights.
Thanks for listening. And until next time, stay secure and keep documenting.
Stay safe out there.